All right. Well, next up, everybody, we've got Till with Tiny Easy. Till has created an amazing tiny house design software. So you can go in there and you literally just design your tiny house. It's amazing. And a lot of builders are actually using it. And so if I were you, Till's got so much valuable information for all of this. I think Till might have disappeared a moment ago. Oh, wait,
Hello?
you might still be here. One
Can you
second.
can you hear me, mate?
Till, let me see. I'm gonna reset the settings so that you can pop up.
Okay.
There
Can
we
you hear
go.
me? Or
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yep.
okay, easy. I'll just
But I
try
can't
to
see.
turn on my video.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Cool, cool. Well, how's it in the land down under?
Oh man,
Well,
rainy today, and it's in the morning, so and I'm a day ahead.
yeah, yeah, Friday. So you're saying Friday's gonna come with rain, huh? I'm just
Well, I
kidding.
mean, I'm gonna say it's probably gonna be sunny for you guys. We're still kind of like coming out of the winter season, so
True.
yeah, waiting for sunny days. But
True,
I mean, it's
true.
it's always a good day, so
Yep, that's right. That's right. Well, good stuff. Yeah, I
absolutely.
still don't see your camera, but well, it's wanting to pop on, I can tell. But yeah, thanks for jumping on here. I'm really excited about your presentation. You're going to take a little bit of a new spin on what you're talking about, and I think it's going to be because you've gathered so much information from all the different builders that you've been working with. So I'm excited to
That's
hear what you
right.
have to say here.
Awesome, man. Yeah, well, thank you so much. I'll just wait for you to pop on my camera. I'm not sure if you're gonna do it or if I need to do it, but
I think you can do it now.
okay,
Good to
let's
do
see.
it.
It's set that I can't start it.
It's saying you
One sec.
can't.
Wait, give me a second. Let me try it out. Haha. Yay, there we go.
There it is.
I
There
did
it
it.
is.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me today.
Oh
Always,
yeah.
always love being on these, yeah, on these conferences. I think, yeah, you just provide so much value for the community, and just like every year after year, it's just getting more and more professional. And I think just the speakers that you're putting together are absolutely amazing. And of course, also, well, Lindsay is amazing as well. I know her super well. We've had a ton of meetings with her as well, and so yeah, she's incredibly knowledgeable in the space that she's in. So yeah, awesome to see her on. So what I will do now, I'm just going to start and share my screen, and I'll just get into the presentation. But yeah, so
Yep.
what you were saying, yes, we've got a little bit of a different take than I guess in the usual conferences talking about tiny home design. But of course, we've been in the tiny home space for, yeah, I mean, with Tiny Easy, like 4 years, 4 or 5 years now, in the tiny home industry in general for around 8 years. So we've just got a lot of insight. And so we're sharing some of that insight, which will be helpful for you if you're getting into looking to buy a tiny home. So I'll be talking about that. So I'll just quickly go and share my screen before I keep talking. Just give me a sec.
Yeah, let's do it. Well, I'm gonna disappear, and if you need anything, I'm right here. But yeah, get after it.
Awesome. Thanks, mate. I think I'll be sweet. All right. Let me know when you guys can see this. All right. So, just let me see. I'll just quickly get the chat up. Yeah, it's up. Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Awesome. All right. Well, first of all, well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for having me. And again, also for Zach and Jason for putting this event together. So what I will be talking about today is the guide to buying a customized tiny home. So just to get started, I'd love for you guys to quickly put into the chat where you guys are all from, so I get a feel, yeah, where everyone's at. I'm personally in New Zealand, as I was saying, so I'm on the other side of the world, probably where, where everyone else is listening from. So Portland, awesome, Alaska, Illinois, Washington State. Amazing. So it looks like I'm going to be the outlier from another country that's not in the US or Canada. So fantastic. All right, so let's just get into it. Oh, amazing. Yeah, New Zealand is awesome. So if you ever are thinking about moving to New Zealand, give me a message. Happy to help you guys, of course, with that as well, which is absolutely not tiny house related, but hey. All right, so let's get into it. So who am I? So I'm Till, one of the co-founders of Tiny Easy. And just to give you a bit of a background of myself, I'm actually a trained architectural designer, but tiny house enthusiast and turned tiny house software maker. So which is a fun little transition here. here, and I'll get into why that is in a second. So my co-founders and I have been in the tiny home. Oh, hey, Noel, nice to see you as well. Oh, yeah, we had a chat yesterday. So yeah, my co-founders and I have been in the tiny home industry for around 8 years now. And with Tiny Easy, we've worked and connected with hundreds of tiny home businesses now and thousands of tiny home enthusiasts over time, helping them design and build their tiny homes. So yeah, this is a little bit of a snapshot of who we are. So this is me, my brother and co-founder here, Eugene, our other co-founder, Mojito, our resident office cat. And so to give you a bit of a further backstory, so my co-founders and I, or my co-founders specifically, Lauren and Eugene, they have actually built and designed their own tiny house that they now currently live in. And they've been living in that for around 2 years or something like that now. So yeah, it's a tiny home company run partially from a tiny home, I guess, if that makes sense. So basically what we've seen is that the journey to going tiny, or the journey of designing tiny homes and selling tiny homes in this industry, is incredibly hard. So we actually started out first working for a tiny home builder, or Lauren and Eugene did, and have really like dove into the industry that way. And so what our mission is to help make everything about tiny homes easy. So hence the name of Tiny Easy. So what we do now is, well, we make software for designing and building as well as selling tiny homes. So we currently work with over 80 tiny home builders worldwide, helping them design, well, sell and build thousands of tiny homes using our software solutions, as well as people that have their own tiny home projects and kind of want to figure out things themselves. So we help these guys as well. And that will all make sense in a second of why I'm telling you this. So just to give you further backstory, I guess what we do is we have 2 different software solutions. One's a bit newer, which is this one, and the other one I'll be talking about in a second as well. So the first one is the Tiny House Configurator. So it's made specifically for tiny home businesses that help them simplify their sales process. So it's used on their website and in their sales room. So basically the way that it works, if you're looking to buy a tiny home and you're looking to approach a builder, you can engage with their range of designs in 3D, walk through the model options, layouts, materials, upgrades, and so on to get accurate pricing, and then get the tiny home built with them that you have basically designed within their range of offerings. So it's kind of like a car configurator, but for tiny homes, and it just provides you as the buyer a ton of transparency of what you're getting and how much things are going to cost, and it makes the entire, I guess, design and build process a ton easier. So for example, Nordic and Spruce, who presented at one of the previous events here, Matt and Jeff, they use the configurator for their tiny homes, for example, and a lot of other people. I don't need to get into that now. And the second software that I talked about before, what Zach mentioned before, is, well, the second software is the 3D Tiny House Designer, and it's a custom design tiny house software. It's kind of like a sandbox tiny home builder that allows you to drag and drop a tiny home together. And then in the end, you export PDF tiny house plans that if you are, well, doing your own personal project, you can take those plans to a builder and you can show them what they want. Or if you're a tiny home builder, you use the software in-house to design tiny homes for your clients. And so more than 10,000 DIYs have actually used this now to try out to design their tiny homes, as well as 80 plus tiny home businesses currently use this worldwide to design and sell their tiny homes. So Lindsay, for example, she used it for a bit as well and designed tiny homes for their client before she moved on to the modular and ADU space. So to talk about what you'll be learning today. So what you've seen is, well, we've worked with a ton of tiny home businesses that are in the design and build space. So what we have seen is we've gathered this unique insight into the tiny home market and understand the different offerings that are out there that help you bring your tiny home to life. So what I'll be talking about is that I will share some of these insights, which will help you specifically if you're in the early stages of considering buying your own tiny home from a tiny home builder. So what I'm going to covering is the 3 levels of tiny home customization, the common design processes you'll then go through with the builder, how to spot a good builder to work with, and how to finally prepare for that important first builder meeting. So my goal for the end of the session is that you want to feel confident walking into a builder's office, or I guess into a Zoom call, because that's what we do nowadays, and being able to talk about your future tiny home with a clear sense of what to expect. So I'd love to hear from you guys where you are on your tiny house journey. So we've got 4 different options for you. So the first one is kind of just browsing and getting into the space. The second one is you're looking to start in around 2 to 3 years. The third one is you're starting within 1 year, or you're a tiny home company, or part of a tiny home company and you're watching to learn more things. So yeah, just put into the chat where you guys are at. Okay, 2 to 3 years, 2 to 3 years as well. Awesome. Oh, you're a tiny home company. What a surprise. Fantastic. Yes, Lisa, we heard a bit about that before. Amazing. Within the year as well. Truephone Tiny 10-year builder. Oh, amazing. Yes, I know you guys. I've seen so much of you. Starting in 1 year, starting my tiny house design business. Amazing. Also a company. Fantastic. So it's a really good mix from all over the, I guess, the different places. So this will be interesting for you if you're looking to build your own tiny home, but also if you're, of course, a tiny home builder providing that design and build service. So, of course, in the end of this talk, I will have a bit of a Q&A. So if you have any questions that come up, please put it into the chat and I'll get to that. So I'll have around 10-15 minutes, depending on how quickly I get through this. So let's talk about the 3 levels of customization. So, well, with tiny homes, what you know, it's a very small space. So it's crucial that that space works for your unique requirements, right? Because, well, what are you going to use the tiny home for? Are you going to use it as an Airbnb? Are you going to live in it full time? Do you have kids? Do you not have kids? Are you one person yourself? Or do you have pets, right? All of these things go into the decision of what kind of tiny home design that you need. And what we've seen with those unique requirements, there's different levels of customizations that you need, depending on, I guess, how complicated your needs are, right? So knowing what your level of customization is that you might need will help you decide what's right for your budget, for your timeline, and which builder you might need to pick so they can help you with your project. So to get started into the first level of customization is off the shelf. So this level provides you with, well, little to no option for customization, but it's usually the most straightforward and budget-friendly option. So the way that that works is tiny home builders have pre-designed a tiny home model ahead of time and then look for a buyer. So usually these are larger tiny home builders that have been in business for a while and have the extra funds to build models ahead of time to fill downtime for their team. So these are usually advertised as in-stock models. And usually builders don't only focus on off the shelf. They usually do some kind of customized tiny homes, but they do off the shelf on the side as well. So the way that it works is builders usually have a workshop, and that can range from a 1-slot workshop where they build 1 tiny home at a time, or they've got a factory where they can build 20, 30 tiny homes, right? And so what happens is sometimes, well, they have a bit of downtime or they want to build in-stock models. So they pre-design the tiny homes, usually based on popular models that they already know, and they build them ahead of time and then wait for buyers to find that specific model. So sometimes you will also find smaller builders starting out with their first tiny home project based on their own design. So the goal is to then show the quality that they can deliver, hoping then to find an interested buyer who then falls in love with that design, right? So it's really just kind of showing, hey, this is the quality of my work. I'm starting up my business and you can trust me with a tiny home that I'm going to build for you. And of course, they want to sell that tiny home so they can make some profit on that initial build. So usually the model comes as is because you're not really able to make any changes because, well, the tiny home's already built. So these in-stock models are often used as show homes until they are sold. So they're usually parked in the sales yard so they can walk potential clients through that model, or they're parked in prominent streets to attract potential buyers, or they use them at expos to walk people through it and show off their business. So another thing to keep in mind with those off-the-shelf units is you can actually find a ton of pre-built tiny homes on Facebook buy and sell websites or Facebook groups, for example, where people advertise their tiny homes. And you will find a ton of new tiny house builders advertising their pre-built tiny homes there. Of course, what to keep in mind is always to vet that builder, and I'll talk more into that in a second, just to make sure that the tiny house that you're getting is, of course, good and not someone's not just posting pictures of a potential tiny home, right? So the main pros that you will find with the off-the-shelf approach is, well, you can visit the model ahead of purchasing and walk through it, which is a huge plus. So you can judge the quality of the build as it is, well, right in front of you. And it's the exact tiny house that you're going to buy. So you can understand how does the space feel as you walk through it. And this will either be at the sales yard of the builder or at expo events where builders exhibit. So another pro is that there's usually not a lot of wait time because you can sign the purchase contract and then get the tiny home delivered almost immediately. Of course, it depends on like how long they still want that tiny home in their sales yard until they're ready to let it go. And sometimes they can also be cheaper. So if a model has been standing around for a while, some builders would be quite eager to sell it to free up the tied up money to then use it for further project. And also if they have been using it just for a display for a while, sometimes you're able to get a discount on that. However, the thing to keep in mind is the design is as is, and you're not really able to make any changes, except maybe adding or removing a cabinet here and there, maybe repainting a wall, and the layout just needs to be perfect for your use case, or you need to compromise a little bit with your wishes on what you want for the tiny home to make that deal work. And a display model can sometimes have some scuffs and marks, depending on how much it has been used as an exhibiting object, I guess. But usually, if you work with a good builder, they really do care for their craft and are mostly eager to touch it up so they can get rid of any blemishes, of course, before you buy it. And so, for example, when we were at an expo in Melbourne a couple of months ago, there were a ton of builders, and around 5 to 7 builders were actually showing tiny homes that they've built specifically for that expo. And around 60–70% of those builders have actually sold those display models on that day because there were a ton of people that were looking for tiny homes. But what we've seen, interestingly, a lot of people that were using it for Airbnb purchased those homes because, of course, the use case is not as personal as, you know, you're going to be living in it every single day. So the Airbnb purchases usually happen on that day. So the next level of customization is, well, that's what I call modular customization. So it offers a bit more flexibility on the design side, but it still allows savings and a fast turnaround. So how does it work? Usually you will find more mature businesses that have developed their own model range, and they have their own unique design aesthetic. So most of the time you will see that, I guess, custom or semi-custom approach together with the off-the-shelf, or you will find a semi-custom approach with a full custom approach together, which we'll talk in a little bit as well. So usually those businesses, well, what I said before, they might have been in business for a couple of years, let's say 5, maybe even 10 years. And each of their staple models have their own unique features and are designed for specific use cases. So for example, a business might have 3 to 10 different models ranging from small to large without a loft, for example, or with a loft. Then they have different roof shapes and materials. They have different use cases in mind. So for example, you might have a tiny home model for full-time living for a family, maybe a senior looking to downsize, so it's got a downstairs bedroom, or you've got a model for a teenager, so it's a little extra room so they can live in their own spot on their parents' property, or you've got an extra room for guests, you've got an Airbnb design or a home office design, right? So you've got these staple models that are starting to develop, and most of the time they've been developed with clients ahead of time, and then they turn into a staple model, or the builder has done that work ahead of time thinking of how they can create a model range for different purposes, right? So builders then offer a customization service in which they tailor that tiny house design to your specific needs, while staying within their range of options, finishes, and upgrades. So let's say, for example, a builder has a 24-foot model, there we go, and, you know, for example, they might be able to change it to a 28-footer with the same kind of design aesthetic, and they might be able to change the siding or the cladding or the roofing to a different style. However, that most of the time, if it's a bigger business, it would be within their range. So for example, you might have different colors and different finishes, and most of the time you will have different upgrades to choose from. So it's kind of like over time they have built this framework of internal options that they offer to their clients to create a customized design for you. And in the end, you stick within their model range. However, you still get a tiny home that is uniquely designed for you without having to start from a blank slate, right? So to get into that, for example, like I was saying before, this doesn't just stop at the materials. You might have different kitchen layouts that are used on a standard, or you have different add-ons for like windows and skylights, and so on, right? So this is a really good option for balancing cost and customization, and you just get a tiny home that's more for you. So let's talk about the pros and cons here. So the pro is that For example, more advanced businesses offer a 3D configurator, allowing you to pick from their design options to create a tailored tiny home design. So you can directly understand how your future tiny home will look without needing to wait for the plans to get drawn, right? And so this is what I'm showing here in the background. I'll actually show you a live one here in a second to walk you guys through that of how that might feel. And also, usually builders at that point can clearly and quickly communicate the pricing of the choices because they mostly have pre-quoted some of these options that they're offering to you. So, you know, let's say one finish might be included and one finish might be an upgrade, and they know the exact cost of how much that is going to be for the model. So they don't need to do a takeoff from scratch every single time, right? So builders following this process will have already spent a significant amount of time thinking about the options that they offer and which options will create a good tiny home, right? So that way you have a well-working tiny home that they have already thought about before, even once you have customized it. So a standardized design process means that they can provide slightly cheaper tiny homes because they can bulk buy materials and less labor is involved in the design, quoting, and building process. And the team doesn't have to start from scratch every single time. Because if you think about it, if you're doing a custom tiny home, and the custom tiny home builders in this chat can relate to this, of course, if you have a plan that you're starting from scratch, well, you need to figure out, well, how does the framing work? Where do the windows go? And like, what are the exact dimensions of how do the cabinets fit in? But if your team has already built a tiny house that's very similar to what you're building, let's say 5 to 10 times, it's already starting to become a bit of muscle memory for them. So the cons, of course, is that some or quite a few tiny home builders that offer this modular or semi-custom process don't yet have an efficient way to showcase their models and how each option will affect the design. So it can sometimes involve like a non-visual checklist, for example. Let's say this could be an Excel spreadsheet where you just go through all of the different options. Or once you have gone through all of the different options, because there's no way to visualize it, you will still get either a custom 3D model drawn up in SketchUp, or you get some custom plans drawn up from a draftsperson. So if you are going down that road, ask if your tiny home builder have a tiny home configurator for you to view their models and options ahead of time, so you can really kind of design in their in their ecospace, if that makes sense. Ecosystem, that's the word. So of course, another con is if you want something super unique, well, this tiny home I guess design process will not have all of that detail, but depending on how many options the builder offer, you can still go quite custom with this. So to give you a real world example, I've got that already kind of like showcased a little bit in the background here. I would love to show you what that modular customization could look like, because I have an hour, so I might as well go through this. So Matt and his team from Nordic and Spruce, for example, have been building tiny homes for years now. And they have developed 3 staple models, and each of them is designed for a specific use case in mind. So they've got 3 models. One's the overnighter, one's the weekender, and the other one's the homesteader, always slightly different use cases. And each of these models come with different sizes. So for example, there's a weekender 24-footer, a 30-footer, and a 34-footer. And then in that tiny home, you've got different options to pick from. So what I will do now is I will open up their configurator here to kind of like show you what that would look like. So you start out here with one of their models pre-selected. So this is the 24-footer weekender, for example. Let's say we'll switch over to the overnighter here like that. You can see the different model here, and you directly understand, oh, okay, this is, well, it kind of gets a bit smaller here. Does that really work for me? Or they've got the homesteader here, which is a 34-footer. So yeah, it's a super interactive process to understand, oh, okay, well, this is their model range, and you can do it at a click of a button. So let's say I'll have a look at what that looks like from the inside. So they've got this really nice kitchen here. They've got this, this living room space over here. And then they've got a bedroom over here on this side, right? So it's kind of like you're looking to go and purchase a bit of real estate, and it's kind of like the same kind of like 3D walkthrough that you can expect on those websites. So let's say they've got 2 different choices of exterior claddings here or sidings. So we'll maybe go with a brighter color here. Some builders have, let's say, 8, 10, 20 different sidings as well, of course, but this is just what they have. So they've got this feature window here on this side. Just to double check, can you guys see this? Could you just quickly put that in the chat? Just to double check I'm not just talking at a wall. I'll just wait for a sec for that to come in. Okay, you can see it. Awesome. So what you'll see here, so they've got a smaller window here by standard, but you can upgrade it to a larger window. Or for the exterior, what I was saying before, you've got different skylight options. So these are, I guess, predetermined spots for them. And if you look on the inside here, all of a sudden you can see, wow, this space really feels a bit different because, well, you can actually see the sky from here. So more light comes in. So let's say we go through the next step here. So we've got plywood or bleached pine finish, but I mean, this could be a ton of different paint colors, for example, or different tile finishes if you wanted that to be like that. But of course, this is just what Nordic and Spruce offers. So they've got a pretty minimalist range. Let's say they've got different kitchens here, one with an overhead shelf and another one with cupboards. Then they've got a kitchen extension here, for example. You can change it to a different timber finish if you want. And so you're really just walking through the tiny home step by step as you're standing in it, and it's changing around you as you kind of customize within their range of options. So they've got this fireplace here. They've got this really cool, I guess, like bed feature. So if you have this as an Airbnb, for example, well, now all of a sudden you can sleep more people in it. So now this kind of becomes a family Airbnb tiny home. Or that you can add this bunk bed over here to add to it. And they've got this pendant light option. So if you look at what we started out with, of course, it's still somewhat similar to the tiny home that we started out with, but it's also already really quite different and it feels different as well. Let's say we can add a mini split. And then in the end, what you do, if you are a customer, for example, and you're looking to buy from them, you would put in your information, like when are you looking to actually get started with this project? What is your budget? What have you saved up so far? Do you need financing to bridge the gap? Do you have any further questions? And then you put in your information, which is all the builder needs to then reach out to you, to then talk to you and understand, okay, well, does this project work for you? Should we make some changes to the model here to really make it work for you? And on the builder standpoint, well, you've already cut out a huge I guess, piece of that conversation of what do you want and what does your model offering look like? Because, well, it's all in that, I guess, streamlined system available in 3D with all of your materials and everything preloaded. So it's a huge time saver. So that's how that would look like. So that's the modular customization system. So what I will do now is I will go through the next bit, which is the full customization. So the full customization is when you are looking to start from scratch as the builder and you're really developing something brand new for that client, right? So if you as the client have very specific lifestyle requirements, or you have very specific design elements that say you found it on some boards on Pinterest and you really want to incorporate that, maybe this might be an option for you. Or you go on like a semi-custom route where you pick a model to start with and then you customize it to your needs, right? So how does it work? What I said before, you usually start off with a blank slate or with a model, and you would use some kind of design software together with the builder to develop a custom project for you. So for example, this is a custom tiny home designed. This is Shay's Tiny Home in New Zealand here that use our software. This is Tiny Home Co. They're out in Melbourne. So these are the plans that they've developed just to give you an idea of kind of like how that looks like. So builders usually have a more in-depth approach for that fully custom process. So they usually would start out by identifying what are your unique lifestyle requirements? What are your energy needs? How many people live in this tiny home? What are your storage preferences? What are your aesthetic choices? So they'll just ensure that the house is really tailored to how you want to live. And this could incorporate anything like custom sourced timber finishes, adding smart home features, integrating off-grid options and stuff like that to really make a tiny home that's never really been there before. And of course, because each tiny home is very unique, and I would say Nick can relate to this because I know that he's got a very custom design process for some of his clients. The design process usually would involve a lot more one-on-one consultations, and you will just expect to go through multiple iterations of design plans. And especially if you've got specific requests that require specific engineering ideas, right? All of that takes time. So builders with experience in those custom projects will guide you through those complexities of that process, from possible needs of, let's say, possibly obtaining permits, right? Because you're not building on a trade end. You might be building an ADU, like what Lindsay was talking about before, or choosing specific, more sustainable, high performance materials, right? So all of those things will be considered. So the first pro of going with that, I guess, level of customization is that, well, every single part of the tiny home is designed with your very unique vision in mind. And it's really a good fit if you have seen a ton of tiny homes on Pinterest, but nothing is like what you want, or you've gone through different expos and you just can't find the right fit for you, that might be a way to go for you. And of course, if you've got very unique features that you need to have, well, again, that custom approach can probably account for that. And also when it comes to the creative freedom, if it's really important to you that you have something that doesn't look like anything else, well, that might be the way for you to go as well. However, when it comes to the cons, as you can imagine, I guess a pre-designed home and a fully custom tiny home, there will be different costs attached to it, because, well, it's just going to take you more time when it comes to the builder to actually develop a fully custom design for you. And then they need to source specific materials, which also takes time. They need very specific design and engineering expertise, so that's going to cost them money. And then of course the build will take longer because they need to figure it out from scratch as well, right? So that means there will be an extended timeline because, well, what I was saying before, the builder needs to go in and really figure out how this specific tiny home design works, and they might need to make some slight adjustment because the plan will need to change slightly depending on what you've designed to actually make this thing buildable. They will need to create a custom takeoff or a quote for you. They need to do custom ordering. They need to maybe do custom approvals, and again, do more custom construction methods that they're not as used to, right? And of course, for you as the client, there's going to be more complex decision making. So there's going to be a lot of choices available, and the decision-making process can sometimes be overwhelming, and you just need to be prepared to make a ton of decisions of, let's say, your materials, your finishes, your layouts, all throughout the build. So this will come up. And so I would say there's no winner when it comes to the 3 different design processes. It just really depends on what you're looking for. So just to sum it up here, we'll just go into the next bit here in a second, but just to sum it up, do you want to go super custom? Well, then that's okay. Then go with a custom design process, but that will come with the pros and cons of that. Do you want to have something off the shelf and you just find something that's perfect for you off the bat? Fantastic. You found a great solution there. So just think about your project. How in depth do you need to go with the customization, and then find a builder that has that specific level of customization for you. So when it comes to common tiny home design processes, which is the next step. So this will not necessarily apply to the level 1 approach, which is the pre-build, because you can't really customize anything anymore. This is going to be more talking about the more modularized design process and the fully custom design process. So I'll walk you through how that most usually will look like when you approach a tiny home builder. So of course, the first step is, well, if the builder has a configurator, well, great. This is a good entry level to really have just a play around with the model range of the builder and see what they have to offer. And you can then put the design together. You can review it with friends and family and get their input, of course. And then once you're done, you can submit the design to the builder, and they can then start talking to you about the possible next steps to get started. So it's really just kind of like bridges that first gap of, hey, what's possible and what do you want, at least in your standard range. Of course, there might be some things that they don't have available in this because, well, it's not their standard, but they can still do it. But it's still a really good idea to just get started with this if the builder has this available. So if you are interested in something like this, check out Nordic and Spruce, for example, that I was talking about before. So it's nordicandspruce.com, and just try out their configurator and see how that works for you. So when it comes to the next stage is, well, the initial consultation. So this, for some builders, might be the first step if you don't have that initial step, I guess. And in that meeting, you will be talking about your ideas. What's your budget going to be? What's your lifestyle that the tiny home will need to fit around? And that will help the builder understand, well, what kind of model might be able to fit your unique needs, or is there going to be a custom project that needs to be done from scratch or heavily customized from one of their existing models. So at this stage, it's quite important to come prepared, because, well, if they have a configurator, well, you can jump right in and discuss those choices already. But if they don't have that, well, then you can really think about what are the different models that they might be offering, or think about that ahead of time so you can guide them into the right direction rather than saying, hey, here's all my ideas, right? And then you can go into the next stage. So if you're doing a custom design, well, bring a ton of inspiration, whether that's photos, a Pinterest board, sketches, maybe a spreadsheet with a ton of different ideas of what you want for your tiny home. really just come with what you have thought of before. So it's really about giving the builder context about your project so they can really hear you out and understand what might be the right solution for you. So when it comes to the next step, this is what I call concept design, where they take that idea from that initial consultation and then they create a design for you. So this is not necessarily required as much if they use a configurator, but if there's a more custom design process where they create plans, for example, this is the road that they will be going down. So they will usually create a 3D model for you, or they might be mocking up some floor plans. So this could be in SketchUp, which is a 3D modeling software, or in our tiny house design software, which a ton of people use as well. And so they really want to come up with a solution of a floor plan that works for you. And also when it comes to the styling. So it's really just an initial concept to see what may or may not work. So based on that initial concept, you might have a few more meetings to kind of refine that idea to get down to that model that really is close to what you're wanting to be building, right? And during that phase, you will be adjusting the design quite a bit until it feels right. And then you will get into the finalization stage. So once the concept is set, you might make still a few final tweaks. And so this could be like adjusting the window placement to get it just right, or even still make a few bigger changes, like changing the roof here and there to make it fit to your unique requirements, right? And then after that, the design gets finalized and the builder will prepare a tailored quote for you. And that really depends on how custom you have gone just before. So if you stick within their model range, of course, they will already have an idea of pricing. If you have done something from scratch and it's super unique, they will need to go through all of the materials they'll be using and put a very detailed, I guess, idea of how much it's going to cost for you, breaking down the project, the products and the pricing attached to that. And of course, how long it's going to take and how much it's going to cost, right? So once that is done and you have the cost and the takeoff, some people call it as well, in front of you, you can make a decision of whether or not you want to move forward with your tiny house build project. So when you are working with a more modular system or I guess pre-designed system, the design sometimes is free of charge because there's really not that much work involved. But if you work with a custom design process and there is a bit of work involved for the builder, sometimes you will have a custom design fee that you pay ahead of time, or you will roll that into the build price just simply because, well, it's going to be labor for that builder, right? So if you don't end up going with that builder, you might have just paid for the design feature just to pay for their services, or it's included if you do end up going with that builder, or you also paid extra on top, just depending on how much work that was. And it really varies from builder to builder. So keep in mind that all of these steps for the custom design process will take time if you go from scratch. So from what we've seen, it can take sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes it can take 4 months, sometimes it can take 6 months until you have that final design, which is perfect for you. And that's not necessarily because of all of the design work involved. It just really depends on how many revisions there's going to be until you get that right design for you. So it's really making sure about communicating what is it that you want, and the builder also really understanding how they can provide a tiny house design for you that is right for your specific solution. So now let's talk about a quick overview of how to find the right builder. So this is really going to be only a few bullet points, but if you think about it, this will still give you a good start to think about, okay, what are a few things to look out for when you're going out to find the right builder? So choosing the right builder is a very crucial part of your tiny home journey. And it's of course very crucial for you to do the right due diligence, that you find the right builder that's aligned with your project. So for example, again, what kind of level of customization do you need? Do they provide that kind of service? Is that builder trustworthy? But we're going into that in a second. So here's the 5 key things that I would look for if I would choose a builder. And there's a lot more to go through as well, but this gives you a quick rough overview. So the first one is experience. First, research the experience. How long have they been building tiny homes? And if they're a newer business, what did they do before they started building tiny homes? Have they worked on tiny homes similar to the one that you want? Because, well, if they have, that means it's likely that they can provide something like that for you as well. So of course, builders with experience like Nick or Trueform Tiny, right? They will have a ton of experience and they've gone through so many projects and they will know how to avoid common pitfalls, and they can help you anticipate those issues ahead of time and really guide you down the right path. So it does help to work with an experienced builder. The next part is reputation. So look for reviews and testimonials from previous clients. So the first thing that you can do is ask the builder if you can speak to some past customers directly. Of course, the customers need to be okay with that, of course, as well, but it's a great way to get a real sense of their professionalism and the quality of the work by seeing what have they done for people before and how do they talk about their projects and if they're happy with it. However, it's also important to source your own reviews and recommendations from the community yourself, rather than just relying on the word of the builder and I guess them referring you to the best clients that they've had, right? So ask around in local tiny home communities about experiences with specific builders, but it's important to listen to people that have actually gotten a tiny house built or have really had some real interactions with them, because of course you can say a lot of things about builders even if they have never actually interacted with them. So look for authentic reviews. The next thing is transparency. So a good builder will be transparent and teach you about their process. And a lot of builders that have been in business for a while and want to be transparent with their process will host open days every now and then, inviting you to visit the workshop and see how things are going to be done once you become one of their clients. Sometimes they also schedule an appointment with you to come in for a viewing. And it's just important to see how are things done in the business, right? Do they have a tidy or professional and organized workspace? Is the team happy? That means there's a good vibe going on. And that usually indicates that that is a good place to build tiny homes. And you can kind of see how things are done. And they will also be transparent about costs and timelines. So if they are vague or avoid answering questions directly, that's a red flag, of course. And the building process simply has its challenges, and a reliable builder will be upfront about what you can expect. So look out for that. So the next thing is compatibility, and that really refers back to some of the design process that I was talking about before. So first of all, they will understand that you're new to building a tiny home, so they will be patient and they will take their time to answer your question. However, your builder will also understand what your vision is for your tiny home, and if they can provide the tiny home that you might want, right? Does the system that they have fit to your unique project? So of course, it is okay for the builder to tell you that some ideas may be unrealistic, just simply because they have that experience. They know what can be built or what cannot be built. However, they will then explain that, and they will give you good, improved alternatives to make sure that they care about your project and think about the best option that's out there for you, right? And in the end, while it's important that you qualify the builder, that they are a good fit for you, a great builder will also make sure that they qualify you as a client. Are they a good fit for their system, and are they a good fit for their offering? And the next part is location. So while most tiny home builders can deliver countrywide or even into other countries, it's also not a bad idea to work locally and see what's out there as well. So what I see a lot sometimes is that a lot of people find builders on Instagram and they might be on the other side of the country and they really want to go with that builder. But if you think about it, there's a lot of logistical challenges attached to it. So think about also shopping locally, if that makes sense. So the advantages of building locally, of course, is that you can visit the workshop for an initial consultation, or even every now and then, depending on if the builder allows that, come in to see as the tiny home is being built for process updates. So local tiny home builders, depending on where you are, again, Lindsay has talked about this, there's lots of different rules and codes depending on where you are. A local builder sometimes will have great knowledge of those codes of the area that they're in. So that local knowledge is quite valuable. And another, I guess, upside, of course, those problems have been solved, but it's still a good plus that the tiny home doesn't have to travel for thousands of miles. It will reduce some carbon emissions, of course, but it also ensures that the tiny house hasn't traveled so many miles until it gets to the final destination. So let's talk about how to prep for your first builder meeting. And these are also just a few bullet points just to keep it short. So when you have your first builder meeting, preparation is key. And here's how you can make sure that you're ready for it and that you get the most out of it. So the first thing is know your budget. So have a general idea of how much you can or cannot spend, and then your builder can guide you in the right direction of what is possible. So, if you have a small budget, then maybe a smaller tiny house or a tiny house with simpler finishes might be the right option. If you have a large budget, well, does that still mean that you have to spend all of that money on a huge tiny house with, lots of expensive items? It really just depends on what your project is and what does that budget fit into? So keep in mind that tiny homes are a lot more affordable than regular homes because they usually don't have land attached to it that you buy, because you're just simply buying the unit, and it has a smaller footprint. But of course, they will have a higher square footage cost, as there's a ton of expensive parts in a tiny home, like, you know, the kitchen and bathroom and other required parts to just get the tiny home to a living standard. So electrical items, you need breaker boards, you need plumbing items, right? All of that is really condensed into a small space. So while it is smaller and it's going to be cheaper, the overall square footage will most likely be more expensive than a regular home if you compare it like that. So knowing that you're willing to spend what you know that you are willing to spend will help you guide that conversation from the start. So another important thing, and I already talked about that before, bring inspiration. And of course, it depends on the level of customization the builder allows, but bring photos and mood boards or even a rough sketch. And just the more clearly you can communicate your ideas, the easier it is for the vision for the builder to actually understand what they're going to build for you. So of course, if the builder has a configurator, you can design that tiny home ahead of time and they already directly know what you want and where they need to pick up. If you're going down that custom tiny home route, well, you can mock up a basic version of the design in a 3D design software like the 3D Tiny House Designer or SketchUp or Floor Planner or something like that to show them what you want. Of course, it is not necessarily a great idea to bombard them with 500 to 1,000 different pictures of inspiration, because then they need to sift through to understand what is it that you really want. So come in with a more refined approach of, okay, I have really considered this and I can understand what I want, so they can then turn that vision into the reality. And also, of course, this is a no-brainer, but prepare your questions. During those meetings, you will have time to ask questions and something that you're unsure about. So prepare that ahead of time, questions for your due diligence. Make sure to bring that into that meeting, and that you can also fully understand the options that they have and the models that they have and the timeline that they might have for you as well. So when can they actually get started? Are they booked out for 2 years, or can they get started in 6 months, for example, which might line up with your timeline? Make sure to explain your needs. I've already said that before, but clearly explain how the tiny house is going to be used, where will it go, and when are you looking to get started, which is one of the most important things when you are building a tiny home. And of course, this is more on the builder side. It's important for the builder to set expectations. So what will their timeline look like? What deliverables will the builder provide at each stage? And what happens if things go wrong? And what will happen if things might need to change mid-build? They should outline that as well. So of course, and this is again a no-brainer, but take notes while you're going through the meeting. It's important to forget important details while you are in a meeting, because there's so much information thrown at you. So it's okay to jot things down to pick up on things later. And it will also help you compare different builders when you're speaking with more than one. And so, for example, if you're taking a virtual meeting, ask them to record the meeting so you can watch it back later. All right, let's wrap it up. We've got around 11 minutes left, so it's a little bit of a Q&A section left. Yeah, I'll get back into that in a second, Cindy. So today we've covered the 3 levels of customization for tiny homes, the typical tiny house design process that you go through when you're working with a tiny home builder, how to find a builder that's right for you, and how to prepare for your first meetings to get off on the right foot with your builder. So my goal is for you to walk away today feeling a little bit more confident and informed as you move forward with your tiny home journey. And that could be you just starting to dream a little bit now, or already you're in that process where you're ready to start meeting with some builders. So you now have a little bit more knowledge to help you start making the right decisions. And so, of course, I encourage you to start by exploring some builders that are in your area who might be a good fit for your future tiny home. If they have a configurator, for example, start designing their tiny home or your tiny home with them in your own time and explore what kind of options they may or may not have. And if you want to go down that fully custom road, explore some design tools like our 3D Tiny House Designer to see what's possible. So the more prepared you are, the smoother that process will go. All right, Q&A. So Cindy, you have said, what's that website that we said you could try the configurator on? Yeah, sure. So I'll just give you that link now. So it is nordicandspruce.com. These guys here, for example, that's a good example there. You can try that out. Let's see, did anyone else have any questions? I'm just going to stop sharing. Yes, my German is coming through. I will stop sharing my screen now. So yeah, does anyone else have any questions? You're very welcome. Okay, what is the typical cost for blueprints that are semi-custom? So it depends on, again, it really depends on who you're going to be working with. So if it is a semi-custom design, sometimes the builder may or may not include a quick mock-up floor plan for you for free in that initial meeting, depending on how efficient the system is, of course. But if you are going down that road and you are going more down to that custom design process, sometimes it might cost $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. It really just depends on the builder. But yeah, something in that kind of price range, if that makes sense. So if you already have a floor plan, Susan, so I would say a floor plan is a really good starting point. So of course, Zach and Jason, they run tinyhouseplans.com as well. So that's maybe why the question is coming up there. So it's really just a good way to communicate the design that you want. Of course, it just depends on if that floor plan is well designed and the builder can actually turn that build into, I guess, reality, right? So if there's tons of questions to be answered still with that floor plan, they will still probably need to do a custom design. It will just take it in a like as more as inspiration. But if the floor plan is really bulletproof, well, they can then use that to already start creating a bit of a quote and tell you how much it's going to cost, if that makes sense. So yeah, I would say a floor plan is a really good way to just communicate what you want more easily because it just gives you something to go off. Yeah, exactly. So it really depends on how difficult your project is and how in depth you go with that. Thanks, Nick. I really appreciate that. Awesome. Let's see if there's any more questions coming in. Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So, of course, for any of the tiny home builders that are listening, just while we're here, if you guys want to have a chat with me, for example, about configurators in general, I know that some of you might already have some versions of configurators up and running. If you guys want to have a chat about that, you can contact me at contact@tinyeasy.co.nz. I'll just put that into the chat here. So that's my email address here. So if you want to have a chat about that, if we can help you with that and it looked interesting for you, of course we can help with that. Just give me a message there. Awesome. Thank you so much, Zach. Or Jason, I'm not quite sure who's on the end of the texting. All right. It looks like we can pretty much wrap up here. Maybe we can do a short break in between the next meeting. So we can go from there.
What's up, Till? Howdy. Hey,
mate.
Great presentation. I love that you're able to walk people through kind of the different options there and, be able to see kind of the different abilities that what people can do, the stock built as is, or the, the customize or the customization completely custom. So some cool different options there and whatnot. And your software obviously can help people design tiny homes really fast, whether it's just the one-off person who's looking at DIY or bring a design to a builder or the builders who want to do it themselves there too. So that's definitely something you should check into if you're, pretty much anybody in the tiny house space, if you have an idea in your mind, go try it out and see if you can actually make it happen. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're just trying to really bridge that gap of the whole design, build, and sales process. So when it comes to the custom design side of things, we've got the tiny house design software, so you can go down that super custom route there. But if you are a builder that has already those, I guess, pre-designed options in a way, that's where the configurator comes in handy, to bridge that gap and put something on your website really where clients can design their own within your systems. So you don't have to do custom every single time,
Yeah.
So we're just seeing where the problem is in the industry of, what is hard and takes a lot of time. And we're just building solutions around that. So yeah, it ties into the entire, I guess, design, sales, and build process.
Yeah. Now the only thing you got to figure out is how to make the actual build process easier and faster.
Yeah, exactly. That's another thing to go down. So maybe like an operating system for tiny home builders or something like that.
Yeah.
That's a ton of work though.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, good stuff. Really appreciate you taking the time to jump in here and dive into all that. And are you going to build your own tiny house or just Just Eugene's got his.
Well, Lauren and Eugene, of course, they have built their own tiny house that they live in. So we're actually looking to build a smaller house together. So my partner and I and Lauren and Eugene together. So us four, we actually want to come together and build a, like, not necessarily a tiny, tiny house on wheels, but like a smaller house that we can all live in together on a piece of land. So that will be our next step. So yeah, we'll probably keep the tiny house definitely, or they will keep the tiny house for sure, because it's such an awesome thing. But yeah, so that's the kind of road that we're going down. Still tiny, but I guess into the next steps of tiny, because it has really helped them, I guess, with the the stair-step approach of getting into the housing market that way. So we're looking to the next stages now soon.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, definitely. I can't remember who said it. Maybe it was Alexis or something, but basically saying that you don't always have to look at going tiny as like your forever home and whatever it is. Maybe it's a stepping stone for where you want to get. Maybe it is your forever home, but maybe it's just like a stepping stone. Maybe it's a generational living setup, whatever it is. There's a lot of different options that it can be used for, and you can turn it into a revenue stream after. Are you guys gonna, or I guess, is Lauren and Eugene gonna be renting out their tiny home, or what's their plan there?
Possibly. So just with the layout, because I mean, we come from that whole design background, I would say the layout is better for full-time living, just the way that it's built, because an upstairs loft and like a home office setup,
Yeah, okay.
all of that is fantastic for full-time living. But when it comes to Airbnbs, you kind of want to have a more open space design with like a bedroom downstairs, something like that. Maybe you want to build it around 24 to 28 foot or something like that. So if we do want to go down the Airbnb route, we might want to actually build another tiny house for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say the purpose of that one is best for full-time living. So we'll probably just find someone who really fits for that. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's awesome.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a good way to go. And there's a lot of different potential opportunities there and everything like that. So cool. Well, let's see. I think we're getting close to wrapping up. The next speaker, I don't think I see him in here yet, so he'll be jumping on any minute, I think. But yeah, any other exciting news that you guys are kind of like? What are you guys working on next? Are you guys working on developing your software more? What are you guys specifically targeting right now?
Oh wow, yeah. So we're constantly busy. So we're really just going down the two roads at the moment. So we're developing the configurator, of course, which is our more recent software offering. So we're just building configurators for our clients at the moment and building out their systems really. So that's the number one side of things, and then the number two side of things is really we're building out the design software and building more and more features to make it more autonomous and going down that route. So like there's just less and less limitations. So you can basically design unlimited kind of styles of tiny homes. So we're really just trying to add more and more functionality to that and make it easier for people. So that's kind of what we're working on. A, the configurator, and B, the tiny house design software. But it's just really nice to see more and more people are using it. I mean, yeah, we're like at around 80 businesses now that use the design software side of things, and quite a few people are using it for the configurator as well now. And so, yeah, it's just a matter of improving it, getting it into more people's hands. We've got a few expos coming up that we'll be at. So we're really just touring New Zealand and Australia for now, but we might actually come over to the US at some point and go over to that side as well. And yeah, dive further into that community. So that'll be exciting.
Nice. I love it, man. That's super cool. Yeah, it's great to see that you guys are like really taking it on of like trying to make it easy for people, especially because the part up front of like dreaming it and seeing it come to reality, that's often the hardest for people to make it happen.
Yeah,
So you
exactly.
guys are trying to reduce the friction there, which is great. Love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the more people that use it, the easier it just gets in the industry. And we just want to make that, we want to just bridge that gap for as many people as possible in that industry. So it just becomes easier to get into tiny homes, meaning more and more people build tiny homes, which is fantastic, of course, for the entire industry.
Yep, for sure. No, that's great. Super awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much for jumping on here. Really appreciate it. It was a great presentation. You're walking through it all, which is awesome. And yeah, any other last thoughts or anything?
Well, I would just say thank you so much for putting the event together. It's just been absolutely fantastic. And yeah, just love to see what you guys are doing in the tiny home community. And of course, also what you're doing outside of the tiny home community. So I'm looking forward to catching up with you soon there and
Yep,
talking more. So yeah, just
absolutely.
again, thank you so much for having me on. And I'm looking forward to being on the next one, of course, again as well.
For sure, man. Definitely. Yeah, we'll make it happen. Good stuff, Till.
Absolutely, man.
We'll really appreciate it, and we'll be in touch.
Absolutely. All right. Talk to you soon.
Yep, chat later.
See ya.
Bye bye.